Hi everyone, this is Karak from Angry Centaur Gaming, and you may know me from my new award-winning book, Find Your Life Partner Quick, a guide to getting your mortician's degree. Today I've been burned, frozen, exploded, and jettisoned out into the vacuum, all in a quest to bring you the review for Borderlands the Pre-Sequel, a game about as light-handed as its title. You play between the time span of Borderlands 1 and 2 and what seems to be a fairly obvious plot to get more Handsome Jack into the game, as he was a fan favorite. You have the ability to play some unique new heroes, including a Claptrap who plays about the way you would expect a Claptrap to play, and that's about it. So does Borderlands a Pre-Sequel hold up to its older brothers, and does lasering and freezing the NPCs' faces off like warts at a dermatologist and leaping tens of stories into the air offer enough gameplay to part with 60 hard-earned space bucks? Or does Borderlands fall into unambitious disaster, a game that does nothing with the IP but stretch it out by another couple hours, even though many fans would probably suck that up with a smile on their face and cash thrown from their wallet anyway? But let's check it out and see. Graphics are up first. Have you ever played Borderlands 2? Okay, cool. So you know exactly what Borderlands the Pre-Sequel looks like. I mean, exactly. If any less work was done to improve the overall look of the game, they would have released Borderlands 2 again and simply wrote over the title on the boxes with a fucking grease pen. It's the same everything, which is good for the fact that it runs well, bad for the fact that if you wanted to see some fancy new AA solutions or really see how far they could push the engine, you're not gonna. It's one part Failureberg, one part expected lackluster student just showing up to make sure he gets all C's in his classes, and yet it's Borderlands, which means the atmosphere and overall attitude make up for a great deal of that. But I mean, come on, I would have expected something to have been improved for 60 bucks. Luckily, the atmosphere and new location at least allow you to feel like something has changed, with you double jumping and slingshotting your way across the moon's low gravity environment. Did I say low gravity? I did. Hey, Destiny, maybe next time you could learn something from the kid sitting in the back row who showed up with almost no improvements, but still understands that gravity's impacted on the fucking moon. Okay, thanks, bye. And the effects on the new weapons are enjoyable, but somewhat predetermined in the fact that they can't look better than what you're accustomed to, because that would just be weird. So they laser shit and freeze shit and don't do it in any spectacular fashion that brings about surprise, because if they did, that would be weird and they have to fit in with the weapon types from the previous games. Despite not stretching their legs enough to really wow me, I do have to say that looking into the Earthlit sky and seeing debris, meteorites, and space stations did give me a cool sense of awe. And that was awesome, but also at odds with what felt like the exact same environments as in the other Borderlands, but with the gravity lowered and new textures. Up next is sound, music, and voice. First up is sound. With the mix of environments here of vacuum and aired locations, you do find that the sound had to go through some effects to really engage the player. The sound effects of the new types of weapons are perfectly in line with those of the previous games, but again, we're retreading the same fucking ground here, like a NASCAR lap. It just feels so samey. And I get that that is what's supposed to be, but goddamn, if I close my eyes, I'd be playing Borderlands 1 or 2. Hell, if I open them half the time, it feels like I'm still playing Borderlands 1 or 2. What is good here, though, is no atrocious mistakes were made. The sounds of the weapons, the fiery burning death, the ice freezing it, the nasty gibbety green goo melting it, all sound clean and a tad uninspired. You can't shame them for getting it as good as their past games, that's for sure, but you certainly can't give them kudos for suddenly holding up lofty goals and hitting them. Up next is music. Well, overall, this is nothing to write home about. Their dynamic music system seems to be wrapped around the same techno and electronica mixes that the previous games have had, and though the music is good, is categorically safe. This is two rubbers, one diaphragm sex here, folks, and is the artistic equivalent of putting the same 5 words into an ad-lib generator at some point. Everything is just going to sound the same. And that's what you get here. There are no outstanding tracks and no bad tracks, just sort of Kanye West tracks showing up and expecting it to be good and instead getting something that sounds like random beats generators and Fruity Loops. I would say okay, but totally uneventful and ultimately forgettable. Up next is voice. Apparently the moon is an expansionist quality of Australia's because, well, every single person has an Australian accent. To say it was odd to know that the moon was now inhabited by a bunch of Kylie Minogues was putting it mildly. Little did we know that the Australians have a space program that didn't involve fire ants and pissed off kangaroos, but instead involved shipping guns and explosives to the moon, and to think we thought China would be the ones to do that. Who knew? The voices are done well and spot on, and though I could have done with a few less accent jokes within the game, all in all, everyone from the characters to the NPCs was done spectacularly well, if it still felt odd, if I do say so, mate. Gameplay. If this game was a book and there was a library category called No Surprises, this book would now be in that library category. Listen, this is Borderlands. If you expect anything whatsoever that is different, you're going to be wildly disappointed. You basically get corrected for Destiny Moon gravity and some new weapon types, but all the same goodness and all the same idiosyncrasies from the previous games that exist here, with a couple new enemy types that are spectacularly like past enemy types. If you can deal with DLC at 60 bucks, then you're going to be fine. But if you expect any improvement or real change up whatsoever, then even some skills and the ability to play Claptrap, it's not going to satisfy you. The questing's the same go here, go there quest style, though one major difference seemed to rear its head in this game versus the prior titles. There were long periods of doing very little in the game but running around. It was like they channeled the Boston Celtics of 96-97. These games have always been about switches and hunting down things, but this game takes it to a whole new level, and it's not hard to find yourself oddly running through a vacuumed environment wondering where the fuck the party is and why no one seems to have been invited, least of all you. In fact, remove the party as well and you basically have a perfect rendition of some of these moments. It can be oddly uneven. The skills list and overall class handling of this version of Borderlands offers no real surprises until you come to Claptrap or Fragtrap himself, which is an odd kind of character. Part random generator, part party helper, he seems to be the freest of all the character classes, but upon playing him, you're going to find out that if you haven't spec'd him to fit with particular groups, he may be the odd man out. Though his skill tree is most likely not only to offer usefulness, but some kind of humor to his skills, they mostly come across flat, as does almost all the humor in this game. Borderlands humor is about as subtle as a crotch grab at a swingers club, and the tradition doesn't change here either. What was somewhat funny in the first game brought a smile in the second game, and now it just seems flat and tired in the third game. Nevertheless, the gunplay is overall as good as the past Borderlands, which means worse than Destiny, but better than almost all other games. And the loot is still fairly spot on, with damn near everything looking like some alien Christmas Santa filled with some random loot while you were on your trip to the moon. The movement is adjusted, and that can take some getting accustomed to as you come to understand that you can leap super high into the vacuum of space, but you also have a slam move where you can slam into the ground from high above your enemies, which is enjoyable, if a bit odd. It does offer a change up to Borderlands' mostly horizontal gameplay, because, let's be honest, Borderlands 1 and 2 were the missionary of video games. Fun times, but ultimately safe, with no real risk-taking verticality to keep things fresh. With Borderlands the Prequel, you have plenty of verticality of areas that can be very much a fresh offering of unique gameplay elements, and add in the two new weapon types, and you have a bit of an injection of hot stuff to spark up those moments. But really, is it enough? Other than that, you also have a fairly lackluster system of oxygen mask additional life bar bullshit that seems to be more in the way than useful. It doesn't overly threaten, and it certainly doesn't offer you any kind of perks. It's just an extra life bar. It adjusts very little in the game. Things like an enemy can't light on fire in a vacuum because there isn't enough oxygen, but if they're in a vacuum, you can shoot their face masks and help them die slowly as they starve for air. But it's not nuanced enough to feel that unique, nor is it instinctual enough to feel enjoyable. It's just there to be used if you want it, but mostly to be ignored if you forget about it. Cooperatively, however, the game does one thing majorly right. All items split amongst players. That means no more being the lice lady at school and searching through the locations with razor-sharp attention to verify you found everything useful. Now just grab everything and the game catalogs it and divides it up into your share. It is a sorely needed improvement that does wonders to improve that part of the game. Things Borderlands the Pre-Sequel gets right. It doesn't fuck with anything from Borderlands that worked, or in fact most of the things that didn't work. It adds verticality and new weapon types to offer some fresh content. It's on the moon, and the feel is fairly spot on. I mean, I can never be on the moon, but at least these dudes attempted to mimic it. Its co-op has been dramatically improved by the system changes. And a new character that will, let's just say, your mileage is going to vary there, actually, because some people like them and some people won't. Things that Borderlands Pre-Sequel gets wrong. It barely shows up and does anything different. It is almost the exact description of DLC or an expansion. Long expanses of doing very little. Oxygen mask additional energy bar has to be a mistake because no one would have thought that was a good idea. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or pop that bitch out an airlock into the cold void of space, or Denise Richards' heart rating scale. This is a wait for a sale. Sorry guys, at full price, this absolutely isn't worth it. The game is indeed solid, but it also does absolutely nothing a mod could not have done. And though it feels like a very polished mod, for sure, $60 does not a mod buy. If this thing was a web URL, it'd be safesequel.com or pricewrong.net or something weird like that. It's just too much money to be asking for the exact same stuff plus a few new uninspired weapons in a new environment. Sorry, but this should have been priced at $19.99 or even $29.99 to more accurately reflect what it offered, which is a fairly safe expansion to the original games, and the fact that this game comes out when so many other games are out there doing so much more at better prices. So that's it. The review is over. If you liked the video, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. If you can share it, great. If you can't, I won't die. Peace out. Go!